دایی یه فرصت خوب حالا پشت مدافعان خداداد عزیزی توی دروازه گل برای ایران خداداد عزیزی باز هم روی زمین گشت سرداران بود و توی دروازه بود گل به نام آزمونده برای ایران
بزنه کریم انصاری گل توی دروازه کریم انصاری دروازه پرتغال باز شد
علی دایی سام توپ توی دروازه گل
اشتباه حرکت از کوچان نژاد فرصت برای کوچان نژاد توی دروازه گل برای ایران.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another Gol Bezan podcast. My name is Sina and I'm joined today by Arya. You've only got the two of us today, so we're going to make it a good episode. Arya, how are you?
Thank you, Sina. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on the podcast. We always tend to say this. One of us has always not been on for a little while. That's now me for I think quite a few months. So good to be back on and speaking about Team Melli again.
You've been angry on the spaces though.
I've been on the spaces.
You've been angry on the spaces.
Yeah, I have. You know, I think it's becoming quite common now. You know, discussing anything to do with Iranian football with Team Melli. I think when you look at how it's been going over the last few months, years, really, it's not really a surprise. So, but yeah, I mean, the spaces are kind of my thing now that I've been doing, and yeah, those are places that I go to vent my thoughts for sure. But I'm back on a podcast again.
Well, yeah, good to have you. So today we're going to talk about the upcoming friendlies, the new squad list. We have a transfer from Arya Javanbakhsh that we'll talk about very briefly. We'll talk about a new addition as well to the coaching staff, which is actually like a fairly bit of good news, like a rare bit of good news for the national team, I'd say. And then we'll wrap it up there. So let's kick off. So we have a friendly coming up. Actually, a few friendlies. We have Cape Verde on the 13th of November, and they've done it so that the winner or the loser it's basically a mini tournament, I guess, with Uzbekistan and Egypt. So if we win against Cape Verde, we'll play the winner of Uzbekistan and Egypt, and sort of vice versa. If we lose, we play the loser of those two teams. So the game with Cape Verde is on the 13th of November, and then the next game, depending on if we win or lose, will be on the 17th or 18th. Uzbekistan I'm a bit tired of. Like, we've played them so many times. Asian Cup friendlies, like we played them. Asian Cup actually no, but we played them a lot in the qualifying rounds and games like that. Egypt is a relatively new one. I think we have played them before though in various friendlies. Cape Verde I don't recall actually. So Arya, what do you think of these friendlies? Cape Verde obviously is they've qualified for the World Cup, so interesting one. But yeah, what do you think about the friendlies?
Yeah, you know, it's a decent friendly actually. I think Cape Verde. I think the problem is with Cape Verde, they're a team that has always had a couple of good players over the years. I think a lot of their kind of main players that have come through. One of them who plays for Villarreal, the defender, I can't remember his name. I think is injured. He's got an ACL injury. He's going to be out until like March. I believe it's Gary Rodriguez, the other player who, I think maybe Ryan Mendes, if I'm not mistaken, who played in Lille, if I'm not mistaken. Those are players who are a little bit older now, kind of coming towards the end of their careers. Got a couple of young players, but ultimately Cape Verde did well recently. They kind of got to the World Cup now for, I think this is their first time in their history. So, you know, they're definitely a team that's showing that even though they have a few older players, young players coming through, and they got some injuries to key players, they're a decent African nation who obviously have also naturalized some Portuguese players because obviously they speak the same language. So yeah, they're a decent outfit for Iran to go up against. Does it prepare us for a World Cup? Not really. It's not a preparation game for a World Cup. It's just a decent showing. You know, I think we played against Tanzania last camp. 2-0 result. Tanzania didn't really give us much. You know, again, another friendly match that was just out there. We just played a game, and just it was just a bit of it was a way to fulfill the friendly that the
Mm.
FIFA give us, because ultimately at this moment in time, the only thing that the federation can do is just fulfill the requirement and just get a team. Unfortunately, they spend quite a bit of money to do that. They spent about 10 grand, $10,000 on a FIFA match agent to play against Tanzania. So clearly, we're not in a good position when it comes to preparation matches. Obviously, when we get through this game against Cape Verde, the next match I'm sure we'll come on to in a minute could be against Egypt, who are a decent team. Some of the players that they've got, but that's to be seen. It's a tournament format. It's not a guaranteed match because you could also play against Uzbekistan for the millionth time.
Mm.
So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I agree and disagree slightly as well because I feel like I agree with the fact that the friendlies can definitely be better. Like we've been saying this for a long time during this campaign. We haven't really got a decent friendly at all. I'd argue Russia was probably our best one, but it's because no one really can play them apart from us. So that's the only one. Whereas with these ones, if you compare it to Tanzania, sorry, they are better. Like they are better, and I would say one because the quality's better, and two, all three of these national teams they've all qualified for the World Cup. Tanzania hasn't, so therefore they will have something more to play for. Like it is a friendly, of course,
Yeah,
but they want to prove themselves more than anything. Egypt, I would love to play. I think Egypt have good quality, physical, pacey with Mohamed Salah as well. So that's a team I would actually very much like to play. Uzbekistan, just please no. Like I don't want to play them. Realistically, in the World Cup, we can there is the chance that we can get Cape Verde or Egypt depending on the pot allocations. Uzbekistan, because we're both in Asia, it won't happen. So in terms of preparation, it's not terrible. Can definitely be better. I agree with you, but it's not the worst.
yeah. I mean, the point you make, with them being World Cup teams, listen, we're in a position now that a lot of teams can go to the World Cup. I think that the Asian qualification is not finished yet, if I'm not mistaken. I think still there's going to be still some Asian teams, believe it or not, going to the World Cup still, which is crazy to think,
Mm.
but that is the case. There's going to be a team that might be their first time going to the World Cup from Asia. So
Uzbekistan's
we're
first
not,
time.
yeah, exactly. So there's
Yeah.
there's a case to be made for this World Cup qualification. Not really. It's not. I mean, I think I've already said this in the past. I'm not a big fan of this whole idea of extending it, making it a 40-team tournament. I just don't think it kind of keeps up with the prestige of the tournament. I think it makes the teams that come into the tournament very easy to play against in the early rounds, especially for those top teams. So I think it kind of makes the idea of qualifying for the World Cup not as important, not as difficult as it maybe was in the past, which is a shame, really, because it should be difficult. A World Cup should be a tough thing to go to.
Yeah,
But
out of those three teams, Egypt is the one where they very narrowly missed out last time, for instance, on qualification. And this time around they've qualified and top of their group they pretty much smashed it. So they're the ones I would actually very much like to play. Cape Verde, listen, we have to win that game. Like it would be a joke if we don't. All respect to them, but it would still be they have qualified on merit. Obviously, the World Cup format extended, but Egypt is the one I really want to play. That's the one I'm very interested in. Realistically, I'd say we need to win against Cape Verde and against Egypt. I want to see our players actually treating it as if it's a real World Cup game because Egypt would be a potential team that we can face, and he needs to play his best team for that. We're less than a year away from the World Cup now. There aren't that many friendly games left, so each game needs to be treated. And we'll talk about this when it comes to the squad list. The attitude I feel like doesn't seem to be there, which is unfortunate. He's called up players that potentially I wouldn't have called up, and then missed out players that in priority for say the U23s, for instance, with Hossein Nejad. We'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, any other closing remarks on the friendlies?
no, look, at the end of the day, we're going to play 2 matches. There were times in the past, if you remember, we had 2 matches available to us. We only took one of them. I
Yeah.
think it was against Algeria. I think it was one of Dragan Skocic's last games, or maybe his last game for the national team. That was one of the counts where we just had one match. So it's better than having just one match. Of course it is. And I think but the problem is preparation matches need to be used properly. We'll come out with a squad in a minute. I don't believe the national team head coach has done a good job of selecting a squad that needs to be preparing for the World Cup. So we'll come out with that.
Yeah, let's talk about that now. So I'll provide you a few sort of updates and then we'll get into it. So the squad was announced a few days ago. Um, I'll talk about the injuries first. So Kholizad and Ghaidi are both injured until looks like December or January time. Um, no Osman, still obviously injured. And then the other ones we can talk about. Arya Javanbakhsh hasn't been called up because he's recently moved, and we'll talk about that in a bit as well to a new club in Belgium, Dende FC. Now we go to the ones that are a bit sort of contested, I guess. Hossein Nejad, he's been prioritized with the U23s instead of the first team. No Moharami, that's an interesting one. He has obviously been injured for a long time, but he's back playing for club. So he's one that he's still our best fullback in my opinion. And no Alayor, that's the one that I think most people are angry about. I've seen in terms of when the squad list was announced, that's maybe the most abundant comment that I've seen in the comment section. So yeah, generally, what do you think about the squad list, Arya?
Look, it's not a good squad list, and I think it comes down to the fact that this U23 Asian Cup is coming up in January, and I think they've got themselves in a bit of a muddle here. There are players in that U23 squad shouldn't be anywhere near the U23 squad. They should be in the senior squad. The reason why I say that now, people will argue with me and say, "Yeah, we're preparing for the Olympic Games." Guys, I'm sorry. The Olympic Games is very good. It's a big thing for any country to go to. The World Cup is unmatched in terms of prestige, importance for Iran, and U23 Asian Cup has no importance at this level. They're 23-year-olds. Some of these players, they're a bit older. They're not young players necessarily. So I wouldn't even go as far to say, they need experience. There are players who, for example, like Jawal Nejad, like Mehdi Zare, who really, you look at him like, okay, we're 7 months away from the World Cup. We're playing against Cape Verde, potentially Egypt. Why not? Why not right now play them in those matches? If you want to go to the Asian Cup in January, you can go to the Asian Cup in January. That's absolutely fine. It's probably good for him to go. But why did he need to play 3 friendly matches? We know Javad is good enough, right? If he's going to go to the Asian Cup in January for the U23s, he's going to go. He's going to do well, right? The problem is, I don't understand why we have to bring him for friendly matches as well, when for a fact he should be in a national team squad come the summer next year. For us, a lot of us on the podcast believe he should be starting. Clearly, the message of him starting hasn't gone to the Gagliardi's head. From I don't know if he's been watching the games that he plays in Russia, but clearly he's good enough to do that. But even so, we're also low on, as you mentioned, players in that position that he plays in, attacking midfield. Kholizad is injured, Qaedi's injured. I know they're wingers by trade, but they're in that attacking department. We need a player like him right now. We need a player like him, and we don't. So I just don't understand it. People will argue about it. I get it. People will have their preferences. They will say, "Oh yeah, we should have him for the Olympic Games." Preparing for that. But I'm sorry, guys. The Olympic squad to me is a feeder squad for the senior squad.
Yeah. I mean, listen, This is an Iran thing again. No other national team does this. Like you look at Spain's national team, England's national team. Spain practically they won a Euros. They won a major tournament with a squad where a lot of them were under the age of 23. Think of yeah, Lamine Yamal basically won the tournament with Pedri and all these guys that are extremely young. And they've proven, and it's not just them, countless times in history, teams have proven with a young squad that you can win tournaments. Now, we're obviously not going to win the World Cup. Let's not like kid ourselves. However, why he's obviously good enough to be in the squad. I think he's good enough to start in the World Cup, personally. Whatever you feel like that, but he shouldn't be going to the U23s. Like he's good enough to be in the first team. He's taking a place from another potential young player who can develop as well. That's another angle to look at it from because he's good enough to already be in the first team. So he shouldn't be there in my opinion. He should be with the first team. He should be starting in my opinion. He just called up older players. Like I don't understand. It never makes sense to me why. It's like the opposite of what we always talk about. Yeah, call up more young players. Not only has he not done that, but he's like deprioritized them. Like he's made them go to under U23 tournaments. Like no other national team does this. It's ridiculous. And even with the Olympics, players snub the Olympics all the time because they feel like it's a lesser tournament than say the Euros or the World Cup. I mean, it's definitely a lesser tournament than that. The Olympics, obviously, you have had players that go to it, but it should not be the priority. And as you said, the Asian Cup is in January. He can still go. Like you can do both.
Look, I mean, the thing is with Karanui, and we discuss it all the time. Nobody's here saying you should make a team of 19-year-olds. You know, it's not the case. We know that can't really happen. First of all, the I think it's been mentioned for many years now. The Persian Gulf Pro League is one of the worst leagues in terms of giving young players a chance to play. We have a very very high average age in that league. Um, so ultimately, a lot of these young players, you know, they're not going to be able to play regularly in the national team. However, when a few players such as Sarkis who I know he's been having a bit of a tough time in Esteghlal recently, but he showed very good things in Russia. Um, Jawad Mehdi, I know he's not played as much in Russia, but he looks like a very talented centre back. Razarinya, who I know he played under Gagliardi very recently, but has had no looking since then. Um, these players are players who need to be, if you see talent in them, they've got to be given a chance. Castro Tahiri, last match against Tanzania, did some good things. Would he have played if Osman was injured? Probably not. So I'm looking at it from this perspective. I think the problem that we have is from that time when we lost to Qatar in the 2023 Asian Cup to now, if you were to take a statistic and say the players who are under 23, who are actually good players, who are statistically doing very well, how many full appearances have they had for the national team? It'll be very low, and it's not, again, I've seen people on Twitter arguing about this whole thing of, oh yeah, but you shouldn't just make this take a nursery. It's not a kindergarten. We're not trying to get young players in for random. No, that isn't the point. The point being is you look at the performance of Javanbakhsh against Tanzania last game, a guy who's unemployed, who shouldn't have been in the national team, had a horrible performance, almost should have got a red card. Really, you look at that and you say, is there not a young player in Iran who could be in that squad ahead of him just now? Because I can guarantee you there is. Right now there's Kushki who's been called up. Fine, I know he was injured recently. Will he get a chance to play in these next two matches? Can't see it happening. We have a lot of problems with people in national team, with people who are around the national team. they're not building at the right environment for this team. We have a decent group of players, a good crop of young players, but it looks so disjointed. Like, how is it that Javad Hossein-Nejad, who we keep banging on about every podcast, every space, hasn't had a proper start for the national team yet? Because honestly, this is the truth. If he was Russian, he'd be playing for the Russian national team regularly just now. 100%, he'd be a regular starter for them. I don't see how that can't happen for Iran.
Mm.
You know, it's really bad. You know, we have a really a big problem here. You know, it doesn't seem like in the next couple of years these players are going to be given a chance. And when it comes to the World Cup, if we fail, which at the moment it looks very likely, we've basically wasted a whole 3-4 years of showing no development in terms of bringing a new crop of footballers into the national team, not for the sake of bringing young players in, but because some players are actually doing well. My point isn't just bringing young players for the sake of bringing young players. No, it's because there are young players who are actually doing well and not getting chances. That's the problem that we've got.
And to emphasize it more, the older players aren't performing.
Yeah,
That's the
100%.
key
They're not
point here. Is
performing.
like if they were performing, then fair enough, they keep their place. But then you have people like Javanbakhsh that haven't had a club for 2 consecutive seasons, pretty much, and he's still not only the captain, but he's like getting regular game time. He's not being snubbed. When you have a young sort of, I know their positions are different, but when you have a young midfielder who's playing regularly in a European league, he's not getting that game time, which is it's idiocy. It doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like right now the squad list that again we're going to come on to a bit more in depth, but like Khalilzadeh is in the squad again. I'm sick of this, man. Like, I'm sorry. Like, how many bad games does one player have to have? You know, if people were
He was
recently
terrible
very
last friendly. He was
100%. But the thing
absolutely
is,
terrible.
now I'm not trying to defend this player, but people were very critical of RF Al very recently. Had a really couple of really bad games for Istiklal. Had some really, really poor showings, right? You know, I've not seen that. I mean, it was bad. Don't get me wrong; it was quite bad from him. But let's not forget, RF Al and Khalid, they were both teammates at Trabzon last season. Yeah, and in my opinion, RF Al was probably the better of the two. One of the points I want to make, I think is very important to make this point, is over the last, I think maybe 7-8 years that we've been covering Iranian football on Gol Bezan, one thing I can say for sure is in the PGPL, unfortunately, one of the things that is very common is players are not able to be consistent. We look at players in the past years who have been top goal scorer, and the following season they turn into absolute rubbish. You know, um, teams can't be consistent. You got what was it? Is it Chador Malu, whatever they're called? They're like top of the league just now. Like, how does that make any sense? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. Like some of these top teams, best teams in Iran, Istiklal, Persepolis. I know Istiklal is second, but Persepolis this season had a terrible, terrible, terrible start. Hashemian, who I've never been a fan of in terms of coaching, he was a great player in his day, but when he was the national team assistant coach under Skocic, very, very poor. So I'm not surprised he didn't do particularly well. What I'm trying to say is, these teams just have a very tough time being consistent. So the point is, when a young player in the PGPL who has in his maybe a couple of years of his career has shown quality, or maybe has shown inconsistency in the PGPL, they cannot yet be judged. But when a player like Khalilzadeh, who's been in the PGPL for God knows how long, shows inconsistency, I'm sorry, that player cannot be in the national team. He can't. You've seen him for many, many, many years now. He's been very inconsistent for a long, long time. There has to come a point where a guy like Daniele Airi, who is also, by the way, part of the U23 squad just now to play against Russia, Bahrain, Kyrgyzstan, I think it is. Whoever it is, the other team that we're playing against. He's a good player. Why is he not in the squad? Why is Abar Rui getting dropped, who had a very good performance in our last camp? So I don't know. I'm very confused with everything that's going on selection-wise for this national team.
Yeah, it's Gagliardi and Kanani both in the squad. So, the
Look,
dynamic duo.
I get why. Listen, I'm not an idiot. I get why they've been called up, but there has to come a point where either you're gonna drop them, you're gonna call them up. He keeps dropping them and then calling them up again. It's like, which one are you gonna do? You can't do one or the other,
Yeah, Khalilzadeh especially, he's his own sort of enemy. He with his head, like he loses his head so much with rash tackles and just poor decision making. You've seen his press conferences and his interviews and things. He's an experienced player. He's a fairly, old player if anything, and he flies off the handle so much, both on the pitch and off the pitch. And he's not the sort of player you want as a centre back in a World Cup. The centre backs and goalkeepers need to be the most consistent players out of everyone on the pitch, and he is one of the ones that are probably the least consistent and the most hot-headed. It's not a good combination, and he's our starting centre back. It's
Yeah. I do just want to mention, just because I know we'll forget, is a bit on a positive note before we get on to this more negative stuff, is Marzia Jafari, who is the women's head national team head coach, was given an award, by the AFC Coach of the Year for guiding Iran to the Asian Cup. So that's good to see, and I'm happy that at least on that side of things there are positives. Unfortunately, we have lost Nicky and Zandy, which is one of our key players. But I'm happy that that's happened. But not everything's doom and gloom in Iranian football. I'm not saying everything's doom and gloom, but this national team is big time, fortunately.
Yeah, we'll get on some more positive news with the appointments as well from the assistant coach. But just quickly before we move on, if you guys are interested in the U23s with Hossein Nejad, we talked about that briefly. They're playing in friendlies, Russia U21s, Kyrgyzstan U23s, and then the Bahrain. Is it the first team or the U23s as well?
Yeah, U23s.
U23s as well, yeah. So they're playing them in a friendly in preparation for an Asian Cup that's happening in January. In their group, it's South Korea, Lebanon, and Uzbekistan. So that's all going on in unison. Back to the squad. So I wanted to very, very briefly talk about Moharami, who's not been called up. He is playing. He is back from injury. What do you think is the decision there in terms of, do you think it's too soon for him? Is that the reason why? Do you think it's, he's already found his fullbacks? I don't think he has, but yeah, what's the decision there, do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, obviously he's called up Daniel Ismaili Far, who is, I think, more the starting right back for Teraktor under Skocic. I think Moharami's had a really difficult year with fitness issues, although he's back from his injury and he's had some performances recently where I think he showed some good things recently for Teraktor as well. I think when I watched him play, I think he's still in a process of recovery, really getting back to his best. I am worried because I think Daniel Ismaili Far is absolutely rubbish. I don't trust Scotch's decision making. I get that he's the head coach of Teraktor and he won the league last season, but I'm sorry, I don't trust him as a coach. So if he's playing Ismaili Far over Moharami, if I was a head coach, I still wouldn't trust him to make that decision for me. I would still bring Moharami in. I agree with you. However, Moharami is not fit yet, and that's just a fact. So, until he gets fit, can't really be part of the national team. It's a shame because the last time we properly watched Mahdi play for the national team, he's probably one of our best players at the Asian Cup. And when he got that really serious knee injury, and he never really recovered from it. Even when he went back, when he was at
Yeah,
Zagreb,
it was a bad
didn't
one.
really have a recovery. It was a bad one. It was a bad one. Those are injuries that he's had a lot of injury problems in his career. So he's one that I don't think we can yet count on him for the World Cup next year just because of his injury history. Same goes for Majid Hosseini, for instance. Injury history is he's so prone to getting quite serious injuries as well. I hope he does come back at some point this season and show himself because we do need him because he's a quality player. But it's such a hard one because with injuries like that, you, you don't want to risk it. Ismaili Farr is playing ahead of him at the moment, so Gallinoi, being the coach that he is, will just base it off what the head coach of Toronto is going to do, which is fair enough if that's what he wants to do. But if you're a coach that knows his players, you know that Mahdi is a better player.
Mm.
So
It's a shame because I remember watching him in Champions League and European ties, and he was back then such a amazing player defensively, and then obviously for the national team he was one of our better players as well. So it's a shame. He is still playing, as in he's got back from injury. He isn't as good as sort of what I mean. He's getting back into things, of course. We'll see what happens there. But I did see some comments. That's why I sort of brought it up. The one that I saw the most number of comments was exclusion of Alayyar. That's the one that I've seen the most number of people getting a bit angry about. What is the logic there? He hasn't had much game time anyway from the national team. But yeah, should he have been called up?
look, I mean, this topic is kind of overblown, I think, as well, because I think Aloyar is look, he should be in a squad. I think he should be in a squad. However, don't think he should be a starter. I don't think he should be a starter. I think he's a player who really, at the moment in time, hasn't played so well at his club in Belgium. However, he should still be in the squad. The problem that we've got is a couple of years ago, you were playing in Europe. You were playing because he is playing in Europe, and you were playing regularly at club in your club in Europe. You'd be in the squad. You know, Unfortunately, for some like ridiculous reason, players are now going back to Iran because they feel like if they don't, they won't be in the squad. How mental is that? I mean, it's crazy. It's ludicrous. Alayor, I don't think he should be a starter at the moment. Didn't show particularly great things against Tanzania when he came on, but he should still be in the squad. He should still be there. We've got injuries in the wings. We've got, Qaidi out, Qanizada out, you know. So I don't know if the other Mohebi is also injured, but, we've got some injuries there. So we need, and Javanbakhsh was also given clearance from his club, FCV Dender, to not be called up just to get, acclimatized to his club. So I think it's kind of crazy that he's not called up. I'm happy that he's bringing in young players like Kushki, Hashem Nejad, these players, but he should be there. He should be there.
Yeah, I agree. It's a crazy trend, because the top 10 European leagues are all better than the Iranian division. Like it's not even debatable. I really think that if I was a national team coach, I would say to them, listen, if any of you play in Europe for X number of minutes throughout the season, you will get called up. That's just I would say that. And that would incentivize them to one, move to Europe, and two, try hard to actually
Well,
get
that
game
was the
time.
case. That
Yeah,
was
that
the
was the
case.
case before. It's nothing. It's not a crazy thought. That was the
No.
case. That's the rule. Was if you were in Europe, the chance of you being called up was far greater. It's the way it should be.
I think one thing that people do complain about, I don't quite understand is, you know, oh yeah, but the PGPL still has some good players. Guys, I'm sorry, listen, there's a reason why Gol Bezan podcast doesn't regularly cover the PGPL, right? It's because we don't really want to. Sorry, we don't. Well, why should we? I mean, what if you guys literally watch the league? It's a terrible league. There's no doubting that. There's not a lot of players that are coming out of Iran right now who are wowing me. A couple of players here and there, but not that much. And the reason for that is because there's no development in that country right now. So if players are making that move to Europe and taking that risk in their careers, then they should be given the chance to be in the national team because that is showing that they are committed to their careers. Now, a guy, for example, like Nima Anders, who just went to Leganés recently, and now he's come back, and we're waiting on him to see if he's going to go back to Leganés because he's still sorting out some bureaucratic stuff. But players like him, players like um, Sahar Khizan, for instance, have come back to Iran. And I'm just thinking, like, now that we're kind of normalizing this, it can't be good for the national team. It can't be good for the national team.
No, no. And I'd say even if there are any players in Europe, that's when I'd start calling up dual nationals and I'd call up all these other players that have even like 10% Iranian blood in them because it's ridiculous all these players moving back to the Persian Pro League because yeah, it's the development's not there at all. Uh the only one that's seeming to stick in Europe is the one that's got the safest place in the national team, and that's Arya Javanbakhsh. He's the only one that wherever he goes in the world, even if he doesn't go to any club and he practices football in his back garden, he will get a call up. That's just, it's guaranteed. Like it's
No,
guaranteed.
listen,
So he's the only
there is
one that,
that,
that doesn't need to go back.
you well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely this, I don't want to create conspiracies, but there are definitely a group of players who are being given preference, which is just the way it is, unfortunately. Javanbakhsh, for example, was unemployed for a few months and he was in the squad. So that shouldn't have really happened. But I mean, I'm happy that he's now in a team, not a great team by any stretch of the imagination, but he stayed in Europe, so I'm happy with
Mm.
that. But,
Is there anything else, Ari, you want to mention about the squads before moving on?
no, look, as I said, I'm really disappointed. As I was saying on Twitter with the fullback selection. And we touched on it with Daniel Ismaili Far, but I think Milad Mohammadi, I'm not a fan. I don't think he should really be considered a national team starter. Maybe as a substitute, but no, I wouldn't say he's a national team. I think the left back who plays for Shabab Al Ahli, Mersad Saifi, who has shown some good things recently, good left back, young player. I think he should be considered for the national team. People like Goudardi, and it's a tough time at SFL this season. But again, I can't can't base a player's PGPL form on his whole selection criteria because PGPL form for me is very inconsistent. But Goudardi has shown some very good things, especially when he was at Sepahan as well. I think ultimately, sorry, not at Sepahan, when he was playing in that Shirazi team, but ultimately I think we have a problem in defence, and it's not getting solved. I think I'm happy that Majid Hossein is back. Will he play from the start? I don't know. And actually, to be honest with you, he probably shouldn't because realistically speaking, Majid Hossein has been out of the national team picture for so long. He has to get acclimatized back into this
Mm.
team. Plus, I mean, let's be honest, he will start Khalid Zadeh.
Yeah.
He will.
My
So
last question on this before we move on to sort of closing the episode is how give these sort of two friendlies coming up, Cape Verde and Egypt or Uzbekistan, how would you like
mm.
us to approach these two games?
um, listen, we've got to go out and win the games. Of course, it's very important. Because we're in a position now where we have to start getting in the mode of competition, competing at a high level. Because we have to start to prepare for the World Cup in the best way possible. That's the most important thing. However, we need to get into a position where defensively we aren't giving away so many chances. We 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 need to set up this team to defend. We need to. We need to. I think people will argue about, oh, it's not exciting football, blah, blah, blah. This team needs to be set up to defend because clearly when we get to play against these big teams, they're going to cause us problems. Without that foundation to defend first, we're going to have some issues in the World Cup next year. So that needs to happen. I hope that we play against Egypt because I think Egypt will give us some problems going in the final third. So I hope what I want to see is I want to see us defend collectively better. Now, we're going to come on to it just now about the new coach that has arrived. But yeah, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I would love to see a win against Cape Verde. I think that it's got to be expected. And then the next game, like if we just assume we're playing Egypt, that's the game that I want to see us. I want to see that resilient side of us because we will be tested. Like Mohamed Salah, and they have a lot of Premier League and top tier European League players. So that's the one I'm excited to see how we set up and how we react to that. Let us know in the comments as well, anyone listening, watching on YouTube, who you would like to see, who would you like to see being called up, and any sort of exclusions, which ones were the most surprising to you. Let us know in the comments. Okay, yeah, let's move on to that new appointment. So I knew I was going to mess up this pronunciation. Antonio Gagliardi joined us, Italian coach, as Gallinoni's assistant coach. I'll tell you what, this is probably the best bit of news I have seen out of the national team for maybe 2 years. It's since the Japan game. This is the best bit of news I've seen. It's pretty good. I'm happy with this. He's got good experience. Italian coaches are notoriously fairly good at sort of defensive setups, and I think he's sort of no different given from where he's sort of come from. So, yeah, I know you follow Italian football a lot more than me, Arya. So, what do you think?
I hate to spoil the party because I know you're happy, but I'm not. I'm not too fussed by disappointment, personally speaking. The reason why I say that is because, look, first of all, you speak about Italian coach. We've already got an Italian coach in this squad. We've got Antonio Manicone, who's been there for a little while now, and he came in with big experience. He was at Lazio, he was at Inter Milan, he was at Switzerland, Bordeaux. He was a very experienced coach as well, but by definitely comparable to Gagliardi. Hasn't done anything for the national team. It clearly hasn't done anything for the national team because the national team, since he's been there, hasn't really done much defensively well or tactically well. So I wouldn't really put that appointment as a success. Now, I know Gagliardi has won the Euros with Mancini last season with Parma, with Chivu. They stayed up. Still not a particularly great team, but they did stay up. He didn't stay on with Chivu for when he went to Inter Milan, so that's a question. Why? But then at the same time, Gagliardi, if I'm not mistaken, not much of a footballer in his past either. He's very much a coach, similar to myself. He's just a coach, not really being a footballer. So, there are, I don't know, like for me, and obviously he was also part of the Saudi Arabian setup recently as well. I think the problem that we've got here is, look, the head coach is Gallinoni. He's the head coach. It doesn't matter who you can bring. You can bring Guardiola as assistant coach. It doesn't matter. He's the head coach, so he's going to make decisions. He's at the end of the day, the guy who makes decisions is Gallinoni. So for me, you can bring anybody as assistant coach. He's had the Barcelona guy. He's had Said Al-Houyi. He's had
Whoa, the Barcelona guy you can't compare to this. He did it. I could do the Barcelona fucking thing. Like it's $200 or whatever it is. Like
yeah, he's had Rahman Rezai, Andronic Teimourian. He's brought all these guys in, done nothing for him. What's to say Antonio Gagliardi is going to do anything for this team? Not to say that Gagliardi is not a good coach. Of course, he's probably a very good coach. He probably is. He's a UEFA Pro license coach. Again, he was at Juventus with Pirlo, you know, not a great stint, but still, I think ultimately, end of the day, it's Gallinoi. He's the head coach. For me, that's all I see.
Mm.
People will be excited about it. Fair enough. Like, you want to be happy about it. Cool. It's a decent appointment. You look at it on paper. But brother, we've got Gallinoi, bro. Like, what
Yeah.
are we doing here? Like, I'm sorry. Okay. Like, cool. Like, this guy's come in, but to
I,
me, it
I
makes no difference.
I see your point. I mean, at the end of the day, you're right. Like Kalano's the big boss. He's the one that makes the calls and everything sort of trickles down from that. I get that. The reason why I said this is the best bit of news since the Japan game is that we haven't had like everything's been negative. Now, this is the one thing that I can bring out that shows
So,
a level of ambition. Everything
sure.
else
But then,
hasn't shown that. So
do you not think bringing in Maniconi was ambitious?
yeah, I think I think this guy brings more experience, if anything, though, than he did.
Yeah, maybe he was at Inter Milan, he was at Lazio. So, I mean, he wasn't that bad. He's no slouch, experience-wise. Maybe a little bit more experience on Gagliardi's side, but Antonio Maniconi was a good player in his day as well. So I think ultimately, like, it's one of those things where, again, like, I'm not trying to be negative because obviously we are being negative because we don't like Gagliardi. Right? Let's just be honest, straight up. But
Hmm.
then at the same time, it's like I'm just going off what I've seen.
Yeah.
I look at Maniconi being there, done nothing. Look at the coaching staff we've got: Said Al Hui, Temurion, Rahman Azai, all these guys that we've got in, not that much for the national team. For me, Gagliardi can. I hope he does well. I wish him best of luck. I don't think it's gonna change much, personally.
No, yeah, fair enough. I get it. I understand. I think it just shows somewhat level of ambition that I've not seen in our recent sort of years. That's the one thing. That's the thing. So that I think it's a very, very small step in a positive direction, especially if you assume that like Galanoy is staying. And I know there are some sort of jitters that he won't be staying, but like he is staying, in my opinion.
Yeah,
If he's
there
not
have been
staying,
some
the second
rumors.
best
Yeah,
is his assistant coaching staff.
yeah, there have been rumors, which I found very interesting. People saying, "Oh, they've brought in this
This guy's oh
Gagliardi
yeah, to
guy
take over after
to take
Gallinoi after
over."
the
No,
World
no,
Cup.
no, no.
Yeah,
That's
that's a
not
that's a
happening, my
that's a good thing
friend.
to talk
Because
about.
listen, first of all, Gagliardi's an assistant coach. That's what he's been for his whole career. Never been a head coach. To come in and be a head coach of Iran, that's a tough job. A tough job. Being the head coach of Iran is not. Being an assistant coach of Iran, that's not a bad job. But being the head coach is not an easy job. So that's why I know he's going to stay as the coach because they need somebody who's got the personality for it.
Mhm.
He might not be a great coach, but he has the personality for it. Where I don't know if Gagliardi can handle that just now. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything because we've already covered the fact that Javanbakhsh has moved to Dende
yeah,
FC
well,
in
yeah.
Belgium.
Just the last thing, of course, we have to touch on. Very important part of I think it's something that's happened the last couple of weeks. We've had two passings. One of them is a very important player for our volleyball national team, Saber Kazemi, who really, was a fantastic player. I mean, my dad's a big volleyball fan, especially for the Iranian national team. Saber Kazemi was a fantastic player. I'm really sad that you know, he had this happened to him when he was in training, went to a coma. All of a sudden, he had some kind of brain damage, um, and yeah, he died in a coma, which is crazy. Like to think a person of 26 years, um, you know, fantastic athlete. He's won MVP awards in his career. He's won the Iranian League. He's won competitions for Iran. He's won gold medals in Asia, and he's passed away. And it's a shame because Iranian volleyball has been kind of on a downward slope as well, same system of football. And he was one of the shining lights of our team. I feel for his family. I really do. I feel for his loved one, first and foremost. and as a whole, the whole volleyball community in Iran. It's a really big sporty community that we've got, very close knit, and to see him pass like that's it's a big loss for our volleyball. And then the second person is somebody who was our previous federation president, and also was the sports minister for our country in the 70s before the revolution. It's a man called Kambiz Atabay. He was, again, as mentioned, sports ministry, president of football during the time of, again, the 1978 World Cup when we were qualified. And, he, a very big figure within football as a whole and sport in the 70s. So obviously he's died. I think he was died at the age of, if I'm not mistaken, here, at the age of 86. So, clearly he's, again, sad for his loved ones. Hopefully, they can find peace for this loss. And we've had two big losses over the last couple of weeks. So hopefully, going forward, see less of these. But unfortunately, that's just the way that life works. Unfortunately,
Yeah, and everyone at Gol Bezan sends their condolences and love to all their loved ones. Very tragic news, especially with Kazemi, a very, very young, individual and sportsman.
Yeah, very sad, very sad.
Yeah. So, Arya, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Gol Bezan. Thank you, everyone, for getting this far in the episodes, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you sort of listen to podcasts. If you are in the YouTube comments, definitely leave us a comment as to sort of, predictions for the Cape Verde match and any other upcoming friendlies that you want to see. I know we have 2 or 3, I think, international breaks until the World Cup left, so not that many. Thank you so much again, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll catch you in the next one. We will do a space before the episode, before the match on the 13th of November.
We'll try it. We'll try.
Yeah, probably before or after. And thank you so much, Arya, for joining me again. We'll catch you in the next one.
See you guys.
Hello, my name is Ali Golizadeh, and you are listening to
Gol Bezan podcast.